Nano lot is not a lottery. It is enormous hard work, and it comes from the attention to detail. And I can't help going back to parenting always. It's one of my favorite pet themes in life anyway. It's about how you raise. And it's not about what holidays you took a child to, what scholarships you got, what book. It's a constant interaction with your child that makes. Same with plots of land. So these farmers have a continuous excellence program on their daily interaction, which will show the result. We all grew up drinking filter coffee, or we drank coffee of any kind. It was always with milk and sugar. By and large, that's the mass story for India. Now, the finest coffee doesn't need either. And you have to discover how coffee tastes and the flavors at a very different level to realize that what we drank as mass coffee is a different category of food in itself. Nothing wrong with it, but it's very different from what we are launching.
Hello and welcome to Fortune India's Disruptors Podcast. From a chai-loving nation, India in the past few years has been having a buzzing coffee culture. What is equally interesting is our specialty coffee culture. But it really hasn't been as easy as it sounds. When Manoj Kumar, CEO Naandi Foundation, which owns the specialty coffee brand Araku Coffee, met coffee experts in France and Italy 15 years ago with the claim that his coffee was among the best in the world, all that he got was a deaf ear. How can a country which has been for centuries exporting to the world mass-grade Robusta beans even dare to call its coffee specialty coffee? Was the white. After all, specialty coffee was all about fine Arabica beans processed and roasted in small batches with unique flavor notes. It was sold at a 50 to 60% premium world over. Today, I have with me Manoj, who has not just put India and Araku coffee on the global specialty coffee map, but is talking about microlots and nanolots. Araku's first yield of nanolots, priced at a whopping 10,000 rupees a kg, got sold in 24 hours. Let's find out more. Thank you, Manoj, for making it to Fortune India's Disruptors Podcast. So, I'm really curious to know about nanolots. What is nanolots? I've heard about single origin coffee. I've heard about microlots, and nanolots is a totally new concept. So, I would like to hear from you, what is nanolots, before we kind of move to the nuances of it.
Thank you, Fortune India, and thank you, Ajita, for calling me for this show.
My pleasure.
I would say nanolot is one of the new terms in the coffee industry, which signifies very high quality coffee, more than anything else. And I would say that probably this could have been called a lot, but then like cyclones and hurricanes, naming is somebody else's business in the industry. So I don't know who named it nanolot. Nanolots, in simple terms, for a layman or for an 8-year-old child, can be described as coffee coming from one single farm of one single farmer. Whereas a microlot, which was the next level of quality below nanolot, is where a coffee is from 4 or 5 or sometimes even 8 or 9 farmers. As long as the terroir was same, as long as the profile and taste look similar, the soil conditions, the agriculture, the way the crop has been raised, processed, if they all are together, then they're batched together and processed. That was called a microlot. But in reality, nanolots takes the game to a new bar altogether. So I'll tell you how it works for Araku, if it helps. So that probably explains the story. So we have tens of thousands of estates, as you know, in the Araku region. And each farmer has anything between half acre to a hectare. That's it, maximum. And they look after the plants, the bushes as we call, like you raise children, with total love and dedication to each bush. When we source it, We have routes where our famous red truck goes. So red truck connotes the farms where the farmers do all the quality parameters to perfection. Only there the red truck comes. So when the red truck comes and they collect coffee and reaches our processing unit, my head of quality there, Vinod Hegde, he looks at it and says, oh my God, these cherries that came today from a particular plot, let's say Ajita's, he'll say this is looking too good. And then he takes one cherry and puts it in what we call the bricks meter. Now, this is where science comes in and the fad stops. So, bricks meter is a small instrument like this. You put a juice of the cherry into that, it gives the reading. A bricks meter reading tells you what is the natural sugar content. You can do it for tomatoes, you can do it for any fruit. For a blueberry, it's up to you. If the natural sugar content shown in that is very high, then it's likely that that coffee is going to have very high quality natural flavors. So on an average, a micro lot coffee would be anything between 17 to 18 to 19 Araku micro lot for a bricks. These nano lots have a brick score of 22, 23, some of them 21. So just for our listeners, on an average, a good coffee will be anything between 12 to 13, the brick score. So we're talking 21. And then Vinod said to our team that this can't be a micro lot anymore because you have to reward 21 very differently. So we said, let's make it a nano lot, which means just that 50 kilo or 500 kilo that comes from your plot will be exclusively processed and sold separately. Of course, we shortlist a few, then an international jury checks it, and when they reconfirm, we say, okay, that's the nano lot. So that's how a nano lot is discovered. When you cross, I think, distinction, records, and another level of scoring, then you create a nano lot.
So, are the nanolot farmers, do they do anything differently when it comes to their farming practices?
It's a very good question. I think nano lot is not a lottery. It is enormous hard work and it comes from the attention to detail. And I can't help going back to parenting always. It's one of my favorite pet themes in life anyway. It's about how you raise. And it's not about what holidays you took a child to, what scholarships you got, what book. It's a constant interaction with your child that makes. Child could be differently able, child could be super intelligent, child could be ordinary. Children are children. They are just curious minds and beautiful bodies. But it's about how you interact with that, same with plots of land. So these farmers have a continuous excellence program on their daily interaction, which will show the result. Of course, we have given each farmer the same chart of 19 steps that each of your bush should get filtered sunlight. If it is not so, cut the branches of the silver oak tree or the indigenous tree you have. Then ensure that there is mulching. That is, you put dry leaves around to a certain quantity. Ensure that you check whether you are having the spiders and the cobwebs and the friendly pests that should be there. So watch out for these signs, we say. Then we look at, is the soil always covered with mulch outside this also for river? So there are all these processes that have to be checked daily. It's like those students who do, or sports people who never miss a single exercise. It is those farmers who actually make it to the nano lot. It's excellence on an everyday basis, is the only thing that creates champions, be it any field. This is my humble submission. But to see it for a tribal farmer from the tribal region of Andhra Pradesh do it is priceless inspiration for me. You associate genius to come from various other inputs, but somebody who had no wherewithal, it's almost like a certain religious passion to nature, to a habit of giving your best more than anything else. So I salute them and their total inspiration. So nano lots are just excellence done every day.
So how many nanolot farmers do you have till now?
Well, I think so we work with close to 100,000 farmers. I would say 30,000 of them are always potential micro lot farmers, and any of them could be a micro lot, which is like up there, 88 or whatever score. Out of this 30,000, I like to think there could be even 3,000 who can make it to nano lot. But then it's like the Olympics, there is only 8 people on a track. So you might have a heats of 32, but only 8 make it to the final race and 3 gets to finish. So it goes down to that. I feel if there is a growing demand for nano lot, so just to give you a sense, our nano lots are anything between 60 to 600 pieces. So if the number of consumers in India increases, it would encourage us to try out more nano lots. We don't want to increase nano lots just for the sake of it and reduce the value and quality of nano lots. But I would think Araku region alone can easily give you 300 nano lot farmers if you wish. This year we just had 10. And so that's the kind of range.
So when you took your first nanolot to the global platforms, how was the response? What kind of questions did people ask you?
So there were, firstly, I should say that the global coffee, specialty coffee buyers, importers, or people who buy it in an auction have changed their view on Indian coffee in the last 10 years. And it has to do with the work these farmers have put in. As you said in the introduction, it moved from what they thought of Indian coffee when I started the journey 15 years ago to now. So they are familiar with Araku Coffee, for instance, and they're willing to experiment a new person from India just because we proved it's possible. So there is a reception, no doubt, but it's important to understand that how we do for a nano lot or even a micro lot auction is we get profiles of who are the people who register to import or for the auction. And if you don't have a track record of buying such coffee, we don't let you bid. So we sort of allow by invitation, if you please. Because this is not for just, I have money I can buy, or I want the best coffee, so I'll bid. It doesn't work like that in the real specialty coffee auctions. So there is a curated team of advisors who tell us we will let these people in to bid. And then they get a sample to cup. And then they cup it themselves in the comfort of their lab. And then they put the bid. And we just tell the floor price and the bidding happens. That's how it is. So in the nano lots, we retained, by bidding, of course, 5 nano lots for selling in India, which was a bold decision because we weren't sure how will India respond. And the other 5 got picked by a Japanese and a Korean who consistently buy almost everything in coffee, the number 1 in the world. So they bought the other 2. So that's how it happened. That's the story.
Interesting. So coming to the Araku story, when you started Araku, when you launched Araku, nobody understood what specialty coffee was. And you, from day one, believed that yours is the best in the world. And I remember, your conversation with Mr. Anand Mahindra, who has invested in Araku and Naandi Foundation. So would you like to tell us about it? Like when you told him about, having the best coffee in the world, what really was his reaction, and what was the conversation?
Yeah, so I'm amazed you remember this story because I've been told this to too many people, maybe a handful, or you are the nano lot who has heard it. The story is that we have regular, almost every 3 months, we have a board meeting, which used to be chaired earlier by our chair, Dr. Ranji Reddy of Reddy Labs fame, who was the chairman, and Mr. Mahindra, who was always there from Mahindra. Now for the last decade and more, he's been the chairman. So these board meetings are a combination of Nandi's work and what are big ideas. And they they're very seriously, physically participating meetings. I've been privileged to have more than 100 with these people. So after these meetings, sometimes we have spillover, where we may meet, or sometimes it's often preceded by a lunch, which Mr. Mahindra hosts. So we had one such session many years ago, and I think Dr. Reddy, who was staying at the Oberoi, suggested let's meet at the Belvedere, and we went there, and no, I think it was in the one of the bars. I don't remember the exact location. We all went. It was Anand, me, and Dr. Reddy, and we had this discussion on this Araku story. Seems to be so interesting and promising. Should we like do something about it? And let's have a brainstorming on that. And I vividly recall both of them. So mind you, we are talking more than 12, 13 years ago.
Yeah.
And Dr. Reddy said that the only brand that is globally known to have Indian roots, to his mind, was the Bose music system. He said that's like benchmark for quality. You have that and it's out there. Although Anand medically pointed out he's not fully Indian in the sense he's an NRI, and I think his name was Satyendranath Bose, if my memory goes right. And it struck us too. And we had this, and Anand then joked that probably the only other two brands that we exported well was maybe Yoga and maybe Gandhi. Other than that, there is no viable commodity. And so Anand posed this question to Dr. Reddy and me. So do you think Araku has that gravitas of a story that is so true, so ethical, so inspirational, that from nowhere we can create a world-class coffee? Is that a possibility? Then should we pursue that? And that's how they both committed that they will pursue this dream, which kind of, in a crazy way, I was arguing that has a potential based on the kind of effort that was going into the agriculture. And I always loved the fact that there wasn't any large-scale farmer-led movement that resulted in a marketplace conquest. And this, I felt, had the potential, because every year when we had this General Assembly of Farmers, the energy was more than any AGM I've seen. And I used to feel maybe they have a collective dream too. We don't know. Maybe they don't know how to articulate it. And that's how they decided. And thereafter, our meetings always used to be, where will that launch be? What will be the trajectory? And I recall we one time agreeing that when we launched the first retail of Araku, and that's when we know we have arrived in quantity and quality, it should be in Paris. Because Paris is the gastronomy capital of the world, whether we like it or not. And it's a statement to do it in Paris. And today, when I look back to see that there is an Araku brand in the most chic streets of Paris, and people don't know and queue up to have that espresso shot. And some of them who have an extra minute ask the barista, where is it from? And they say, India. They are like, India and coffee? India and chai. So it's extraordinary, unexplainable joy to see that there's nothing we cannot do. To me, it was a moonshot.
And you have 2 cafes in Paris.
We have 3 cafes in Paris, and just day before yesterday, we signed up the 4th.
Wow.
So,
and if I'm not mistaken, you're also looking at entering the United States.
No, we already have entered. And so in hopefully March, April, we'll open our first cafe in Manhattan.
So it was a very, concerted decision to open your first set of cafes outside of India. And what really is the India kind of strategy?
So there are 2 things. One, for very fine quality items, Indian economy did not have enough consumers to be able to appreciate and be discerning enough to buy and create a brand themselves. It needed very mature consumers who can understand. And coffee is one such category, because we all grew up drinking filter coffee. or we drank coffee of any kind, it was always with milk and sugar. By and large, that's the mass story for India. Now, the finest coffee doesn't need either. And you have to discover how coffee tastes and the flavors at a very different level to realize that what we drank as mass coffee is a different category of food in itself. Nothing wrong with it, but it's very different from what we are launching. So, to be able to convert filter coffee people to drink Araku coffee or any such coffee, which is a specialty, nano lot or micro lot, was going to be an ordeal in itself. You probably had to introduce it as a new category of food, which has to be appreciated differently. I mean, you can't compete with maybe finer single malt with an all monk rum drinker. You need to create a different. So this had the same challenge. And we then saw that there were markets where it was already mature, where people are used to finest coffee. And there were countries like the Nordic. There were parts of Italy. There were parts of France. And various other global areas where this was, it was not a national or a global phenomenon. There were niche markets. So we said, unless you are there and such aficionados drink and approve, you can't come and claim you have a new category. And Indians are very quick learners and they can beat anybody after learning. So once they got the hang of it, we knew India will have a market too. So that's why it was a conscious decision that do it in Paris, see where else it can be. So that was the real, what I call coffeeology, or the story of the palate and discovery. The other is, Indians have a tendency to appreciate brands that have been approved worldwide. I won't even call it colonial or whatever. It's just that some of the discerning markets have a way to tick the boxes of what's a good brand. So we said, if we make it there, then that will be much more appreciated. Because for us, it's important to know one of our KPIs, if you want to call it, or like triple bottom line, one of it was that farmers should never get lower prices. That is an obsession for us. We want to ensure that every year my farmer gets a better price, better and better. This is so not only counterintuitive, although this is how it should be. This is completely against to me, that's fundamentally the only disruption that I'm doing than anything else, if you ask me. That is, build a company where you constantly keep increasing your own sourcing price. The world over, companies in name of innovation discusses, how can I reduce my COG? How can I reduce the cost of my raw material? And here is a team that says, how can I increase my cost of material? Because only if I increase, my farmer makes money. My product is not of the farmer. It's by the farmer and for the farmer. So that changes the game. To me, that's the disruption in the way you created a brand. Now, that's possible, not because the farmer deserves a price because he's the farmer, or she's the farmer, more correctly. Because the farmer is raising the bar of quality. Now, you can't be taking that only for you because you're the retailer. You need to keep giving the farmer the first share of that higher quality. And that is possible only if you build a bunch of consumers who appreciate this new form of capitalism, if you please, where the producers get the first pie of the profit or of the surplus. And then you allow it on the rest of the chain. That's really what is, to me, the meat of the Araku Coffee story, because India is redefining through this story how to relook at sourcing prices and how to bring the farmer from the periphery and almost invisibility to the center of your product. But not by putting a farmer's photograph on it, but by daring to tell that I hike the prices of farmers every year. So every year in the Araku region, I'm accused of raising prices. Every single year. And every year, my farmers make profits. So that is why what we call Arakunomics is having one fundamental pillar called P, which is profit for farmers, Q, which is quality for consumer, and R, which is how the product is made by regenerating the planet, not by killing the planet. So this PQR is kind of our mantra, our talisman. So the real point that I wanted to table on your question is that mission was something which Anand Mahindra and Dr. Reddy loved. It was not that we will have a new category. It was not that there will be new packaging, that we'll have global benchmarking. But India would have launched not only quality, but a very different ethics in business to the world market. And that was something which they said is worth trying for. And I'm glad they stood by it and they're still with us.
And that's the reason the conscious decision of launching more cafes outside of India and not so many in India. Because India, again, when it comes to coffee drinking, it's very much, though the coffee culture has really picked up, it's very much, I'm sure, 90% of the sales would be coming from cappuccino or lattes.
I can tell you that you're partially correct.
Yeah.
Although I'm kind of eating my own words a bit when I say that a lot of specialty coffee consumers are emerging in India too. And we are discovering it because we sell so many of our coffees online. The pie chart, when I look, they're going to different places. I have regular buyers from Dehradun, from Nashik, from Coimbatore, from Surat, than just Mumbai, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Delhi, etc. So, and even if I look at my Nano lot bidders, they're very diverse. So like the color wheel in coffee, we say if my pie chart, I put it in a color wheel and look at who are the buyers who buy repeatedly only Araku, and they're buying it for the score, not just the story. That's changing. So there is, I think, with more and more Indians traveling abroad and discovering nuances of food and cuisine, I think they are able to upgrade their palate. I won't even say upgrade their palate, they're able to diversify their palate, because I don't want to look down on my old grandmother's food. But I think it's a combination of this. There is a new category of very fine cuisine that needed that consumers to be created. It has to do with global travel. So they are emerging. So my answer to your question is, I think Indian cafes we will open probably more than global eventually, because this is a great market that is emerging. So as you know, we just opened the third one in Bangalore. I'm not counting the pop-ups we have in many places, but permanent cafes, the third one. I already signed for the fourth in Bandra. Wow. and the fifth one in Whitefield in Bangalore. So I think it will be a continuous one. I don't have I've not reached the point to say that I'll open a cafe every week or something, like some people can say. But we are looking at discovering consumer pockets where these kind of discerning consumers are emerging. And I think then we deserve, and also we like this to be more kind of a neighborhood cafe. We have a growing B2B market. I tell companies that I visit, a day will come when your employees will judge you by the coffee you serve. And so better upgrade your coffee, I joke. I can tell you that many places now, the chairman's office is changing to have Araku, because there is a story and there is a narrative and there is a process and a ritual. And in some places, we have done training for their staff how to serve this coffee and what to tell in 15 seconds to a guest. So coffeeology is part of this kind of work we are doing. And so our B2B may outpace the speed at which we can open cafes. Cafes is a more investment process, and we are obsessed with the details of a cafe too. So we can't open a cafe in 30 days, because so much minute details in design and aesthetics go into it. Our cafe architect sits in New York, Jorge Zapata. He gives the brand guideline, and then we find local architects and people to execute it. It's somehow taking such a long time for us. We need to crack that. And there's so much into the sourcing of our material also is a challenge. It has to be so ethical, so good. So I think if I remove that, India easily probably has 100 cafe minimum for specialty coffee waiting, and they will all be packed and breaking even in less than 2 years.
Interesting. In fact, I must tell you that ever since I put together that specialty coffee story for the magazine, I've become kind of a coffee snob, if I may call. I have invested in a Chemex kettle and I filter my own coffee.
That's so heartening to hear, because it is upgrading the experience for people who are not necessarily already aficionados in certain category, which is such a big reward, because it's a different experience. And if I may add to what you just said, I agree that Chemex gives a certain quality, the filter, the way the fine coffee comes out, but also that you pause the button in the process from switching to just taking a cappuccino or whatever from a machine to a ritual of coffee. So you created in your time a space for coffee. You make it. You've decided to appreciate it, and I can assure you that slowly you will appreciate the effort that a farmer has put in to get this cup for you. So we are slowly developing a deeper association between food and the consumer now. To me, that's really the fast food we are breaking.
So, apart from coffee, you're also going to bring in other...
Well, we definitely have more farmers produce to sell. I do not know whether it will come in which incarnation to Indian or export markets. Currently, we export spices too. But I think there is a need to bring in many more quality food to India. India can feed the world, if you ask me.
Because I think that is again another revenue for the farmers. Because I remember having rajma at your cafe.
Yes. So we get this Kala Namak rice, which is unknown to most Indians.
Okay.
Which is from a district in Shravasti in Uttar Pradesh. It's not from Shravasti now. We source it from Shravasti. It's a region in the Terai of UP. From different other places, districts that it comes. That rice has very low glycemic index. It's probably one of the few rice that diabetes people can eat. It's got such a beautiful flavor, fragrance, and a texture. For the record, I eat only Shravasti Kala Namak rice because we are farmers and we source from them. So in our cafes, we said we'll only serve that rice. And we tell that story when somebody comes. It's a tribute to the farmers of Uttar Pradesh who continue to keep this tradition up. They're constantly wanting to change to a high-yielding variety, which is just a random mass one. So this is a challenge we have. Same with turmeric, same with pepper. India has so many unique agricultural produce, which I'm scared, we will get variations of it coming from some other country. So almost everything you see as superfood now was always part of Indian cuisine a century ago. Whether it is your quinoa, whether it is your chia seeds, they all existed in India. But it's coming as the Aztec or Mayan civilization superfood now because we didn't do anything about it. So also, nothing against quick service or anything, but I tell children that they're so separated from food. They think food comes from an app. And rightfully, I don't blame them.
Yeah.
My generation thought it came from a refrigerator.
Yeah.
And the one before that thought it was made at home.
Yeah.
So the degrees of separation from a farmer to a consumer is so immense. We really need to bridge it if you want to raise quality of food and reduce adulteration and bring in more quality into our plate. This is needed. So my answer is, again, going back to your question, we need to see how these coffeeology rituals are also a way for people to think deeper about food. Who produced it? Are they doing well? What's the process? And what gives this fine taste? Rather than just the packaging or just the presentation or just a cafe atmosphere should not be the only condition. That's how I think.
So, Manoj, I've had the privilege of visiting Araku and meeting some of your farmers. And what really stayed with me is they're all women farmers. And there's a diversity, equity, inclusion story out there. And I was so happy to meet some of them. They proudly flashed their bank passbook. And that to me was a symbol of financial independence, which we in metros we do, thousands of panels. We talk about financial inclusion for women and all of that. There I could actually see it in person, and it was really back of beyond. So, would you like to touch upon your the way you have brought in these women into the ecosystem, and how difficult was it?
Yeah. So it's a tough question. I'll try to be brief. I tend to give long answers because my stories are all long. Firstly, I want to place on record the fact that we probably have more than 72,000 women farmers who are what I call lakpatis. That's they make in lakhs their net profit. When I started the journey, they did not have even 10,000 rupees annual as cash. Because there were also many doing barter. So the transition, I will say, is completely driven by the world-class coffee they created and the related pepper and other products that came from the same farm, all of which got exported, all of which were regenerative, organic, etc. But mainly following these 19 steps, which our New Zealander David Hogg, so clearly propounded and said you have to follow this to happen. So we are the only ones, for instance, who use bioinoculants, which are flower extracts and which have certain properties of filtering the pests that are not good versus the ones that are good. It's not decimating all. They also have greater absorption power for plants, and therefore you get better nutrition. They have abilities to share with neighboring plants. So these kind of inoculants-based science that allows microbial activity or life science activity to be perpetuated is the core of our success in agricultural science. And here I want to tell you, it's about discipline, a certain level of command and obedience, no shortcuts, a deep-rooted sense of loyalty, and a long-term vision that is needed for this science to be spread. Otherwise, we live in a world, unfortunately, including me, I was raised in a world where shortcuts are celebrated. Which is the fastest unicorn? Who can make something the fastest? Google Maps tells you which is the shortest way to reach somewhere. Everything is fastest, shortest. So if I have to promote something which doesn't have shortcuts, there is no fastest. You want to make the world's best tasty bananas, which are also the most nutritious, I'll say these are the process. No shortcut. If I want an army of farmers who will believe in this science with no shortcuts, complete honesty, follow all the processes, I promise you, there are only women who can do it. That's truly the power of women, more than anything else, that they can lead a very disciplined army to follow processes with integrity without being tempted to do shortcuts. That's why, amongst everything else, more than the need for Araku is really that region is not somewhere where women need a gender upliftment from me. Trust me. They're quite liberated, liberal societies. The equality is very well pronounced. Trust me. Unless we impose our patriarchy on them, they're quite okay. There may be gender stereotyping that has stepped in, no doubt, whether it's caring children or raising something else, but by and large, it's intact. But they still have this edge of building this process. So that's why we went with them, number one. Number two, it's been proven world over, and more so in Araku region, that if they suddenly get wealth or cash in hand, and if it went to the men, it was going up for alcohol. And it is going up for maybe even gambling now, with gaming and everything there. So I needed it to be rooted where the cash that we create with all this disruption, to borrow your phrase, was going to be staying there. And that needed women to not only leave the process, but also control the money that comes. So they had to be in charge. We had to create the mechanism. I think they even thought that was part of the process, that the money should be used properly. It was built in from the beginning. So that tremendously helped retain the wealth there. When you go there and you see that women have more gold, that they've invested in some of their children's education to go and study outside the valley, in cities, wherever they are bright students, or to buy assets that are useful, like a motorbike or some cases a tractor. And even there, the advantage is these women did not make it very individualistic. We have farmers who bought a second-hand tractor, which is leased out for all the farmers in the village, telling everybody needn't buy a tractor. Whereas in many parts of India, I hear if one bought an SUV, every farmer then buys an SUV. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do this conspicuous consumption of the kind that we are used to. So the challenge of retaining some of their fascinating collaborative values, where the waste was not so common, harmony with nature. If you wanted to retain them with sudden wealth coming, you needed it to be led by women.
Interesting.
So it helped that way. But yeah, it's nice when we see from a different lens, it looks like it's diversity and inclusion, but frankly, it's far more deeper.
Thank you, Manoj, for taking us through the Araku story. It was indeed insightful and inspiring. So, the next time you walk into an Araku cafe, do remember that the coffee that you're drinking is actually produced by a woman farmer. The Araku story is all about by the women and for the women farmers. See you soon. I really hope you enjoyed this podcast as much as I did putting it together for you. Thank you.